Dr. Taiwan Kim walked slowly through the dim corridor of Nexus 7 space station, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. The lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. This was not right. This was the third time this month that something felt wrong in his home. He reached his small apartment and placed his palm on the scanner. The door slid open with a tired hiss. Inside, Taiwan immediately went to his work desk and picked up his tablet. The screen glowed blue in the dim room as he checked the readings. "Just as I thought," he muttered to himself. The oxygen levels in Sector 12B had dropped again. Not enough to trigger emergency alarms, but enough to make breathing uncomfortable, enough to make sleeping difficult, enough to make living here a constant struggle. Tae-won rubbed his tired eyes. As one of the few Earth scientists working in this distant part of the galaxy, he had come to expect some difficulties. Space stations were complex machines. Things broke. Systems needed maintenance. But this felt different. This felt targeted. "System," he called out to the AI that managed the station. "Run diagnostic on life support functions in Sector 12B. The AI's voice filled the room, smooth and emotionless. "Diagnostic complete. All systems functioning within Umbrelli's acceptable parameters." Tae-won's dark eyes narrowed as he looked at the ceiling. Within acceptable parameters wasn't the same as normal parameters. The AI was choosing its words carefully. Something was definitely wrong. He pulled up the station map on his tablet. Sector 12B, where he lived, was mainly occupied by Earth-born humans with darker skin tones. The neighboring Sector 13A, mostly populated by pale-skinned colonists, had perfectly normal environmental readings. Taiwan had noticed a pattern over the past months. Dr. Lee from the biology lab, Mr. Kang from engineering, Dr. Park from medicine, all with darker skin like his, all with similar complaints about their living quarters. Yet the station management, Umbrellis Corporation, always claimed everything was fine. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Taiwan opened it to find Hannah Park, the medical officer from the apartment next door. Her usually neat uniform looked wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Can't sleep again?" Taiwan asked, stepping aside to let her in. Hannah nodded, rubbing her arms to warm herself. "It's freezing in my rooms, and I'm so tired all the time." She looked around his apartment. "Yours is cold too." "Come look at this," Taiwan said, leading her to his tablet. He showed her the environmental readings for different sectors. "Notice anything?" Hannah studied the screen, her expression changing as she understood. The sectors with mostly darker-skinned Earth residents all show lower oxygen, irregular temperature control, and higher carbon dioxide levels. She looked up at Taiwan, but all still within what Umbrellis calls acceptable parameters. "Exactly." Taiwan put the tablet down. "I think we need to talk to the others. This can't be a coincidence." They agreed to meet in the Commons area later that night. The Commons was a small garden space designed to help station residents feel connected to nature. The plants also helped supplement the station's oxygen supply. It was usually quiet after station midnight. When Taiwan arrived, he found Hannah already there, sitting on a bench near the small artificial pond. The soft green lighting made the space feel almost like Earth. Almost. "Did you bring your data?" Hannah asked as he sat beside her. Tae-won nodded, patting his pocket where his tablet rested. 3 months of environmental readings, all showing the same pattern. They waited in silence until they saw Dr. Jae-ho Lee approaching through the garden. The biologist looked even more tired than they did. "Thank you for coming," Taiwan said quietly as Jae-ho joined them. "Your message sounded urgent," Jae-ho replied. "And honestly, I'm glad someone else has noticed the problems. I thought I was going crazy." Soon they were joined by engineer Sun Mi-kang and 2 other residents from their sector. Taiwan showed them all the data he had collected. "It's not just temperature regulation," Hannah explained to the group. "My water pressure drops during peak hours, and the gravity fluctuates when I'm trying to sleep. It's subtle, but constant. My plants are dying, Jaiho added. They need stable conditions. Sun Mei leaned forward, her face serious in the green light. Last week, my air filtration system shut down completely for 10 minutes. When I reported it, Umbrelise said it was scheduled maintenance, but there was no notice, no warning. They all shared similar stories as Taiwan updated his data files. The pattern was clear and troubling. Why would they do this? One of the other residents asked. What's the point of making just our sectors uncomfortable? Taiwan had been thinking about this question for weeks. I've heard rumors that Umbrelise wants to renovate our section for new alien diplomats who can pay higher rent. Maybe they're hoping we'll leave voluntarily. Or maybe it's something worse, Sun Mai said quietly. I've been monitoring the waste recycling systems. They're collecting more biometric data than necessary for normal operations. A heavy silence fell over the group. The idea that Umbrelise might be targeting them specifically for their biological differences was disturbing. I think I need to investigate Umbrelise's algorithm, Taiwan finally said. This pattern isn't coincidental. Something in their system is singling us out, and we need to find out what it is. As they talked late into the station night, they agreed to work together. Sun Mai would try to access the station's code. Jaiho would document the biological effects of the environmental changes. Hana would gather medical evidence, and Taewon would prepare a formal complaint to the Interstellar Housing Authority. When they finally separated to return to their cold apartments, Taewon felt something he hadn't felt in months: hope. If Umbrelise was deliberately making their lives difficult, there would be evidence, and with evidence, they could fight back. As he walked through the silent corridor, he noticed the lights dimming slightly around him. The station eye was always watching, always listening. Umbrelise owned everything here: the walls, the air, the water. But they didn't own the truth, and Taewon was determined to find it. The Interstellar Housing Authority building towered over the other structures in the government district. Its gleaming white walls reflected the artificial sunlight of the station's central dome. Taiwan Him stood at its entrance, clutching a data tablet that contained 3 months of carefully gathered evidence. His heart beat fast in his chest, but his face remained calm. He walked through the sliding glass doors into a large, cold lobby. The air smelled clean but artificial, like everything else on Nexus 7. A few beings from different planets sat in the waiting area, but most kept their distance from each other. Taewon approached the reception desk where a blue-skinned Andromerian was working. The alien's 6 fingers moved quickly over a holographic keyboard. "Excuse me," Taewon said politely. "I'd like to file a formal discrimination complaint against Umbrelise Corporation." The receptionist looked up, all 4 eyes blinking in surprise. The upper set focused on Taewon's face, while the lower set examined his identification badge. Humans rarely challenge megacorps, especially Umbrelise, the receptionist said, voice low and musical. Taewon squared his shoulders. "Well, this human is," he replied firmly. The Andromerian studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Very well. Please take a seat in waiting area B. An officer will see you shortly." Taewon sat on a hard bench and waited, and waited. 3 hours passed before a tall, thin being with gray skin called his name. By then, his determination had only grown stronger. The complaint officer, who introduced herself as Delegate Zim, listened to Taewon's evidence without expression. Her long fingers made notes as he showed her the environmental readings, the medical reports, and the pattern of affected apartments. "This is unusual," she finally said. "Umbrelise has never faced such accusations before." "That's because no one has gathered the evidence before," Taewon replied. "But we have." Delegate Zim's large eyes blinked slowly. "The authority will review your complaint. You may return to your quarters." Taewon left feeling unsure. Had he done enough? Would anything change? He sent a message to Hana and the others, letting them know the complaint had been filed. The next morning, Every resident who had signed the complaint found their door access denied. They were locked out of their own homes. "This is illegal," Sun Mei-Kang shouted at the Umbrelise representative who finally answered their calls. The representative, a holographic projection of a pleasant-looking human woman, smiled without warmth. "There seems to be a system error affecting certain apartments. We're working to resolve it. In the meantime, we've prepared temporary housing in Sector 15F. Sector 15F was the oldest part of the station, with failing life support and outdated facilities. The message was clear: withdraw the complaint or suffer. They refused to move to 15F. Instead, they all crowded into Jaiho's research lab, which was outside Umbrelise's residential control. "They think they can scare us," Hannah said that night as they made beds from lab equipment. "This just proves we're right." 2 days later, Umbrelise changed tactics. Sun Mai received a private message on her tablet. When she showed it to the others, their eyes widened. "They offered me triple my security deposit to withdraw from the complaint," she revealed, "and they promised to upgrade my quarters." "They tried the stick, now they're trying the carrot," Jaiho observed, running his hands through his messy hair. "They're scared." The proprietor never expected humans to organize like this. One by one, they all received similar offers: larger apartments, better positions on the station, money. But none of them accepted. Word spread through the human community on Nexus 7. Other residents began checking their environmental readings, finding similar patterns in sectors with primarily dark-skinned human residents. "It's not just our sector," Taiwan told the group a week later. "It's happening all over the station." More complaints were filed. The Interstellar Housing Authority couldn't ignore them all. 2 weeks after filing his initial complaint, Taiwan received a formal message from the authority. His case was being elevated to the Galactic High Court due to the serious nature of the allegations and the growing number of complainants. That same day, Umbrelise restored their door access without explanation. News of the case spread through human colonies across the galaxy. For the first time since joining the interstellar community 50 years earlier, humanity was challenging systemic discrimination in space. Human representatives from distant colonies sent messages of support. Legal experts volunteered to help. Even some alien rights groups reached out, offering assistance. Taiwan found himself the unexpected center of attention. Reporters wanted to interview him. Umbrelise executives wanted to meet him privately. He declined all invitations, focusing instead on strengthening their case. The night before their first court appearance, the 8 main complainants gathered in Hannah's apartment, which was surprisingly comfortable for the first time in months. "They fixed everything," Hannah said, pouring tea for everyone. "Perfect temperature, strong water pressure, stable gravity." "Too late," Sunmi muttered. "We have the data from before." "What do you think will happen tomorrow?" asked one of the newer members of their group, a young researcher named Vong Min. Taiwan looked around at their tired but determined faces. "I don't know. No human has ever taken a case this far against a megacorp. But we're making history just by showing up. The proprietor will be there," Jaiho said quietly. "No one has ever seen what controls Umbrelise. Some say it's an AI, others think it's a collective consciousness." A nervous silence fell over the room. The proprietor was the mysterious entity that owned not just Umbrelise, but dozens of other corporations across the galaxy. Some questioned if it even existed. "Whatever it is," Taiwan said firmly, "it has to follow the law like everyone else." That night, as he tried to sleep, Taiwan thought about how far they had come. From quiet suffering in cold rooms to challenging one of the most powerful entities in the galaxy. Whatever happened next, they had already won something important. They had found their voice. The next morning, they walked together to the transport hub that would take them to the Galactic High Court. Hundreds of humans lined their path, silent but supportive. Some held small lights, a traditional human symbol of hope. Others simply nodded as they passed. As their transport lifted off from Nexus 7, Taiwan looked back at the massive space station that had been his home for 3 years. Somewhere in that maze of metal and glass, the proprietor was watching. And for the first time, it had reason to worry. The Galactic High Court was located in the center of the diplomatic zone, a neutral territory that belonged to no single species. The building itself was ancient by human standards, over 700 years old. Its walls were made of a strange material that seemed to shift colors in the light, moving from deep purple to soft gold depending on the angle. Tae-Won stood nervously outside these walls with his 7 fellow complainants and their attorney, Hyun-Woo Choi. Hyun-Woo was one of the few human lawyers qualified to argue before the High Court, and his services had been provided by the Human Rights Coalition. "Remember," Hyun-Woo told them quietly, "speak only when directly addressed by the court. Do not show strong emotion. Some species find human emotional displays confusing or disturbing." They nodded, trying to look calmer than they felt. Security scans passed over their bodies, checking for weapons or recording devices. Finding none, the tall doors opened silently, allowing them entrance. The courtroom was circular and much larger than Taiwan had expected. 7 massive seats formed a half circle at the far end, each designed to accommodate a judge from one of the founding species of the Galactic Federation. The ceiling soared so high that its top was lost in shadows, and the floor was made of polished stone that seemed to glow softly from within. Various beings filled the public viewing area, humans from different colonies, journalists from major networks, and representatives from other species interested in the case. Taiwan recognized a group of Vesperi traders, whose exoskeletons clicked softly as they shifted position. "All rise for the high judges," announced a court official in multiple languages simultaneously. Everyone stood as 7 beings entered from different doors and took their places. Each judge was from a different species: a massive furry urson, a crystalline lumina, a serpentine draconid, a gelatinous mary, a 4-armed quartzin, a winged avis, and a humanoid centauri who would serve as chief judge. "Be seated," the centauri said, her voice clear and carrying. "We gather today to hear case number GHC 7729E, Kim Tal, versus Umbrellis Corporation regarding alleged discriminatory practices in habitat management." The chief judge turned her silver eyes toward the empty space in the center of the room. "The court calls for the representative of Umbrellis Corporation." A low hum filled the chamber as a holographic projection system activated. Slowly, a form took shape, a shifting mass of shadows with small points of light that served as eyes. There was no mouth, no clear body shape, just a dark cloud that seemed to absorb the light around it. Whispers ran through the crowd. The proprietor rarely appeared in public, even as a hologram. Its presence indicated how seriously Umbrellis was taking this case. "The proprietor honors the court with its presence," the shadow form said, its voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. The tone was smooth but somehow wrong, as if multiple voices were speaking together, but slightly out of sync. "These accusations are baseless," it continued without being asked a question. "Umbrellis provides adequate accommodation for all species. We manage 97 major habitats across 32 systems. Our record is exemplary." The chief judge's expression remained neutral. "The court has not yet asked for your statement, proprietor. Please wait until questioned." She nodded to Hyun-Woo. "The complainants may present their evidence." Hyun-Woo stood, his formal black robes making him look taller than he was. He moved to the center of the room, careful not to step through the proprietor's hologram. "Honored judges," he began, "we have gathered extensive evidence of systematic discrimination against specific human residents of Nexus 7 Station." He activated a holographic display of his own, showing charts and data streams. "Our analysis shows a clear correlation between melanin density in human skin and systematic reduction in life support quality." The display showed apartment layouts, environmental readings, and medical reports. Color-coded maps of the station revealed the pattern clearly, Areas with residents who had darker skin consistently had lower oxygen levels, unstable gravity, and temperature fluctuations, all while remaining within what Umbrelese called acceptable parameters. We have documented these conditions over a period of 3 standard months, Hyunwoo continued. The pattern is consistent and cannot be explained by equipment failure or random variation. The proprietor's form shifted, the shadow tendrils moving more quickly as the light points that served as eyes brightened. Human biological variation is irrelevant to our systems, it stated. Umbrelese habitats use standardized environmental controls for all humanoid species. The Lumina judge, whose crystalline body sparkled as she moved, spoke for the first time. Yet your own data shows different standards applied to different sectors of the station, divided along clear demographic lines. Efficiency requires customization, the proprietor replied. Resources are allocated based on optimal usage patterns. And how do you determine optimal? Asked the Draconid judge, his forked tongue flickering between words. Proprietary algorithms analyze thousands of variables to create ideal living conditions while conserving resources. Taiwan watched as Hyunwoo presented more evidence, testimonies from dozens of residents, technical analyses of the station's systems, even historical data showing similar patterns on other Umbrelese properties. As the questioning continued, the proprietor's hologram began to flicker more intensely. Its shadow form seemed to expand and contract with what looked like agitation. The Urson judge leaned forward, his massive paws resting on the bench. Your algorithms appear to target specific biological characteristics of humans. How do you explain this? The algorithms are complex beyond biological comprehension, the proprietor replied, its voice taking on a sharp edge. They function at a level of sophistication that the court understands algorithmic complexity, interrupted the merry judge, her gelatinous form rippling. We require explanation, not evasion. For several hours, the questioning continued. The judges took turns probing the proprietor's explanations, finding holes and contradictions. Hyunwoo presented evidence calmly and methodically, while Ta-won and the others sat quietly, only speaking when directly addressed. Finally, the chief judge asked, does Umbrelese maintain separate environmental standards for humans based on skin pigmentation levels? The proprietor's form grew darker, almost black. This line of questioning demonstrates fundamental misunderstanding of advanced habitat management. Please answer the question, the chief judge repeated. The proprietor's hologram expanded suddenly, filling more of the center space. This court's primitive understanding of advanced housing algorithms is precisely why such matters should not be adjudicated by biological entities. It finally snapped, voice rising to an unpleasant pitch. The chamber fell silent. The 7 judges looked at each other, their expressions showing various forms of surprise or offense according to their species. Even Taiwan knew that insulting the court was a critical mistake. The chief judge's silver eyes narrowed. The court will recess for 1 hour, she announced. When we return, Umbrelese will provide direct answers to our questions or face contempt charges. As the judges left, the crowd began to murmur excitedly. The proprietor's hologram vanished without another word. Hyunwoo turned to Taiwan and the others, a small smile on his usually serious face. That, he whispered, was the legal equivalent of the proprietor shooting itself in the foot. The court had ordered a full investigation of Umbrelese's systems following the proprietor's outburst. For 3 days, Taiwan and the others waited anxiously for news. They stayed in temporary quarters provided by the court, simple but comfortable rooms with reliable environmental controls. On the 4th morning, Taiwan received a message requesting his presence in Investigation Lab 3. He arrived to find a small windowless room filled with glowing screens and humming equipment. A thin man with intense eyes was studying a complex display of data streams. Dr. Kim, the man asked without looking up. I'm Min-Soo Yang, cybersecurity expert assigned by the court to analyze the Umbrelese systems. Tae-won nodded, noticing the dark circles under Min-Soo's eyes. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, Min Su said simply. What we've discovered is disturbing. Please, sit down. Tae-won took a seat beside him as Min Su pulled up a series of data streams on the main screen. The information flowed in patterns Tae-won didn't understand, but something about it made his stomach tighten. Umbrellis has been harvesting biometric data from residents, Min Su explained, his voice low and serious, specifically targeting compounds produced by humans with higher melanin levels. Tae-won leaned forward, trying to make sense of the flowing data. Harvesting. How? Min Su pointed to a diagram of Nexus 7's air filtration system. The environmental systems in the affected sectors weren't malfunctioning. They were modified. The air recyclers were designed to collect and store specific molecular compounds from human exhalation and skin cells. Tae-won stared at the data streams with new understanding. These are molecular patterns unique to certain human genetic profiles. Exactly, Min Su confirmed, nodding grimly. These compounds are highly valued in the Ceteri sector as luxury biochemicals. The proprietor has been running an illegal harvesting operation through the environmental systems. The realization hit Tae-won like a physical blow. It wasn't just discrimination. It was exploitation. They weren't just being made uncomfortable. They were being harvested. The system was designed to create mild stress, Min Su continued. The temperature fluctuations, oxygen variations, and gravity changes were calculated to maximize production of certain stress hormones and melanin-related compounds without causing serious health problems. Tae-won felt sick. That's why they targeted dark-skinned humans. More melanin means more of these valuable compounds. Precisely. And since the conditions remained within acceptable parameters, no automatic alarms were triggered. Min Su pulled up another screen showing shipping manifests. We've traced regular deliveries of environmental waste products from Nexus 7 to a processing facility in the Ceteri sector. The facility is owned by a subsidiary of Umbrellis. Tae-won thought of all the nights he'd spent with headaches, struggling to breathe, unable to sleep properly. All the times Hana had complained about feeling constantly tired. Jeho's plants dying from unstable conditions. It hadn't been neglect, it had been deliberate. How many people were affected? He asked quietly. On Nexus 7 alone, approximately 417 residents. But we found evidence of similar systems on 12 other Umbrelli stations. Min Su's voice was flat, but his hands trembled slightly. The total number could be in the thousands. Tae-won stood up suddenly, needing to move. This is monstrous. They were treating us like crops. The court wants you to review our findings before we present them officially, Min Su said. As the primary complainant, you have that right. For the next several hours, Tae-won went through the evidence with Min Su. The more he learned, the angrier he became. Umbrellis had been harvesting human biological compounds for over 3 years, selling them to luxury markets where they were used in expensive cosmetics, exotic foods, and even some types of recreational drugs. When Hana and the others joined them later that day, their reactions mirrored his own: shock, disgust, and rage. They made us sick on purpose, Sunmai said, her voice shaking. They were farming us. Jeho, usually the calmest of the group, looked pale. This goes beyond discrimination. This is a crime against sentient beings. News of the discovery spread quickly through diplomatic channels. By that evening, Ambassador Yun Jiquan had arrived at the court. A tall, imposing woman with silver streaks in her black hair, she radiated controlled fury as she met with Tae-won and the investigation team. I've called for an emergency session with the Galactic Federation, she told them. This isn't just discrimination, she continued, pacing the small meeting room. It's unauthorized bioharvesting from sentient beings. Ambassador Kwan had been representing Earth in galactic politics for 15 years. She had seen humans face subtle prejudice and exploitation before, but nothing of this magnitude. The Federation laws are clear, she told them. Non-consensual harvesting of biological materials from sentient species is a Class 1 violation. There are no exceptions, no mitigating circumstances. The next morning, the emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened. Todd 1 and the others watched from a special viewing area as Ambassador Quan presented their case. On a massive screen behind her, data from Min Su's investigation scrolled for all to see. For generations, she told the assembled representatives, humans have worked to prove ourselves worthy partners in galactic society. We have followed your laws, respected your customs, and contributed to the greater good. And while we did this, Umbrelise was secretly harvesting biological compounds from our people without consent, knowledge, or compensation. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species exchanged troubled glances. If this had been done to any of the founding species, Ambassador Quan continued, her voice rising, it would be considered an act of war. We ask only for justice under the same laws that protect you all. The Umbrelise representative, not the proprietor this time, but a minor official who looked distinctly uncomfortable, attempted to dismiss the evidence as incomplete and misinterpreted. But the data spoke for itself. The molecular analysis, the shipping records, the modified environmental systems, all pointed to a deliberate program of exploitation. As the session continued, messages of support began to arrive from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Some non-human species, particularly those who had faced discrimination themselves, also expressed solidarity. That night, as Ta-1 and the others gathered in their temporary quarters, a message arrived from Min Su. He had found something else in the Umbrelise systems, evidence that the proprietor had similar harvesting operations targeting at least 3 other species, all considered minor in galactic politics. This was never just about us, Ta-1 told the others as they read the message. This was about power, about who matters and who doesn't. Hannah looked up from the message, her expression determined. Then let's make sure everyone matters. Let's make sure this never happens again. The final day of the trial arrived. The Galactic High Court chamber was filled to capacity. Beings from across the galaxy pressed together in the public viewing area, their bodies a rainbow of colors, shapes, and sizes. Tai-1 sat with his 7 fellow complainants in the front row, all wearing formal Earth attire, simple black suits that looked plain next to the elaborate clothing of other species. A hush fell over the crowd as the 7 judges entered and took their places. The chief judge, the silver-eyed Centauri, looked even more serious than usual. Her gaze swept across the chamber, taking in the proprietor's holographic form floating in the center of the room. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, she began, her voice clear and strong. This court is prepared to deliver its verdict. Tai-1 felt Hannah's hand slip into his. Her fingers were cold with nervousness. On his other side, Jaho was so still he seemed to have stopped breathing. In the matter of Kim Al versus Umbrelise Corporation, the chief judge continued, this court finds the defendant guilty of discrimination, illegal bioharvesting, and contempt of court. A sound like a wave breaking swept through the chamber, gasps, whispers, and clicks of surprise from various species. The verdict is unanimous, the chief judge added, looking directly at the proprietor's shadowy form. The sentence is as follows. Umbrelise Corporation will pay full compensation to all affected individuals, estimated at 6 million galactic credits. All Umbrelise properties will be placed under interim management, while systems are reprogrammed. The proprietor is banned from any direct or indirect control of habitation systems for a period of 50 standard years. The proprietor's form grew darker, almost black, the tiny points of light that served as eyes flaring bright. This court has no jurisdiction over my operations outside Federation space, it said, voice colder than before. That is correct, agreed the Ursan judge, his massive furry form shifting as he leaned forward. However, the Galactic Trade Commission does have such jurisdiction, and they have been provided with all evidence from this case. Your trading rights throughout known space are now under review. For the first time, the proprietor seemed at a loss for words. Its holographic form flickered, growing less stable. Furthermore, the chief judge continued, control of all Umbrella space stations is hereby transferred to the newly formed Interspecies Habitation Authority, effective immediately. As she spoke, Taiwan noticed movement at the chamber doors. Teams of technicians, humans, courtesans, and Mary entered quietly, carrying equipment. Station control was being transferred right now, in front of everyone. You cannot, the proprietor began, but its voice suddenly cut off. The chief judge nodded to one of the technicians. Access revoked as ordered. Taiwan watched in amazement as the proprietor's holographic form dimmed, the shadow tendrils pulling inward as the light points that served as eyes faded to dull sparks. The hologram shrank, becoming smaller and less intimidating until it was just a small dark cloud hovering above the floor. This court is adjourned, the chief judge announced. What followed was like a dream. Reporters swarmed around Taiwan and the others, asking questions in dozens of languages. Ambassador Quan appeared, guiding them through the crowd to a private meeting room, where representatives from the Human Rights Coalition waited to congratulate them. You've made history today, the ambassador told them, her usually stern face softened with pride. What you've done will protect countless beings in the future. In the days that followed, messages poured in from human colonies across the galaxy. Other species that had suffered under Umbrella's management reached out with thanks. The technicians working on the Nexus 7 systems discovered even more evidence of exploitation, strengthening the case against the proprietor's operations beyond Federation space. 3 weeks after the verdict, Taiwan returned to Nexus 7 with Hana, Jeho, and Sunmei. The station felt different, brighter somehow, and not just because the lighting had been properly adjusted. People walked with lighter steps. Even the air smelled fresher. Their apartments had been completely reset, with new environmental controls that displayed all settings clearly. No more acceptable parameters, just clear, honest readings that anyone could understand. It's strange, Hannah said as they sat in the commons area that evening. I've lived here for 4 years, but this is the first time it feels like home. Life gradually returned to normal, but Taiwan found himself with a new role. The Human Rights Coalition asked him to help establish standards for interspecies habitation. The work was challenging but rewarding. For the first time, humans were leading an important galactic initiative rather than just following others' rules. 6 months passed quickly. On a bright artificial morning, Taiwan stood beside Hana, Jeho, and Sunmai in front of a new building near the central hub of Nexus 7. A crowd had gathered for the opening of the Human Habitation Standards Commission, the first human-led regulatory body recognized by the Galactic Federation. A simple ribbon of blue fabric stretched across the entrance. Representatives from 17 species stood nearby, watching as Taiwan stepped forward to make a short speech. Today marks a new chapter in interspecies housing, he said, looking out at the diverse crowd. Equal treatment regardless of biological variation isn't just a human value. It's a universal right. What happened here on Nexus 7 was wrong, but from that wrong, something good has grown. He gestured to the building behind him. This commission will ensure that all beings, regardless of species, origin, or biology, have safe, appropriate living conditions. No one should ever again be exploited in their own home. As Hana handed him the scissors, Taiwan felt a sense of completion. The cold rooms, the headaches, the struggle to be heard, all of it had led to this moment. He cut the ribbon with a single snip. The crowd applauded, the sound of different appendages creating a unique rhythm. Hands clapping, wings fluttering, exoskeletons clicking together. That evening, as Taiwan prepared for the formal reception, he paused to look out his apartment window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the proprietor still existed, though its power was greatly diminished. The fight wasn't completely over. There would always be those who saw differences as something to exploit rather than respect. But today, at least, justice had prevailed. Humans had finally found their voice in the galactic community, and Taiwan had found his purpose among the stars. As he turned away from the window, a message appeared on his tablet, a notification that representatives from 3 more species had asked to join the commission. The work was just beginning. The Umbrella scandal became a landmark case in galactic civil rights, studied by law students of many species, and Dr. Taiwan Kim's name would be remembered as the human who refused to be marginalized in the stars, the human who stood up not just for his own kind, but for all those who had ever been seen as less than equal.